In the end, those questions really helped, and I was really able to focus and not be super sweaty, except the waiter made like a really awkward comment about our date. Oh, you don't make awkward comments on a couple when they're on a first date. It's already hard enough. It was like a little bit of an awkward vibe, but hopefully that won't happen to you. What's up, sisterhood? It's Bethany and Kristen here. I still you literally,
you know why? Because last time when you said it's Bethany and you paused and then I didn't say anything.
You gotta be on your toes around here. Okay, so I have been thinking back to before I met Dave, and I was thinking about a couple first dates that I went on. I mean, you got married young. You didn't have as many first date opportunities young compared to me.
Well, I had a first date with Zach.
True. But I think that my experience with first dates is so relatable to what many of you are experiencing or thinking, because first dates, as exciting as they are, or just even one first date, it is absolutely terrifying. Like, okay, I'm going with this person. I may know them really well. I may not know them really well. And what are we supposed to do for the time that we're together? And what are we supposed to talk about? And what if it's awkward? And how do I even really get to know him? And the stress can become real. And then you kind of freak yourself out. And then you're really awkward. And you're like, wow, well, we had no fun. And now I'm really stressed and sweaty. I stink.
So, especially in Texas where it's really hot.
We have a few questions, 3 questions actually, that we think will help you have a super successful first date and help you to know if you should even go on a second date. So that's what we're going to be covering. You're not going to want to miss it.
Isn't that what you want to figure out? Like, do I want to go on a second date? These are must-ask questions. But before we get there, and stick with us, because these are honestly really, really good questions. You might be surprised. I don't know. You guys know we're having the 2021 Girl Defined Conference this summer in San Antonio. Yes. And you know what? As we've thought about this whole past year, because last year we didn't get together. No. As you know, and as so many of you, like, we were all just in our homes, like quarantining, not seeing people. And I know for us personally, like, it was hard, and you start to feel even fearful, anxious about the future. You feel isolated. You feel really dry just relationally. Alone. Yeah. And even spiritually, just feeling kind of dark and just very lonely. And so one of the reasons we're so excited to gather is just to regather as the sisterhood, to have community, to have friendship, to literally link arms and give a physical hug. But as we thought about this last year, our whole theme is shine bright, really learning to stand courageously for God in a dark world, shining bright for him. But our breakout sessions are all on, like, so many different topics that are so relatable to you. And the one that I'm teaching on is something that I think is so perfect for a time right now, for this season of life after the pandemic. And it's all about overcoming fear, anxiety, and worry. And that is something that I personally struggle with and have really struggled with in the past, and God has brought a lot of freedom into my life, but really worrying about the future, anxious about tomorrow. A lot of you know about my journey with infertility, struggling with miscarriage, just so much fear and anxiety in that, learning to surrender, trust God. And I know you probably have a lot of things in your heart that you're wrestling with. And so that's the breakout session I'm teaching on Saturday. You're teaching breakout sessions. We have a whole bunch of other people teaching breakout sessions, and that's just the breakout session. So if that resonates with you, just that one session alone, I hope you will come and physically give us a hug at the 2021 Girl Defined Conference and join us in San Antonio, Texas on July 30th and 31st this summer. It is going to be such an amazing time of refreshment. I think we need this more than ever coming off of the pandemic. I think we need to make time to gather as the sisterhood. So join us. Go to girldefined.com/conference for more details.
And sign up quick, because like your breakout session is almost full.
I think so.
And my breakout session is almost full because we have the capacity within the breakout rooms. So if you are like, oh, that sounds really amazing, go sign up right now so that you don't miss out.
Yeah, so you can get the breakout sessions you actually want to attend.
Okay, so if you're like, get to the stuff about guys, get to the stuff about that first date. I need to know. So this was obviously a few years ago before I was married, and I remember a guy asked me on a date, and we were somewhat familiar with each other. We went to the same church, but we weren't like super close friends. And so I'm like, I knew he came highly recommended, but
wait, how did you know that?
Because the other people that I knew were like, yeah, he's a great guy. Okay. Like, I'm not. I asked
like a recommendation board. Like, oh, he is highly recommended.
That would actually be very helpful. No, like I asked around, like, hey, I know him, but not super well. Do you think I should go on a date with him? Like, yeah, definitely, give it a shot. And so that's the thing. Like, you can know of a guy, or think like, well, he comes highly recommended, but would he be a good fit for me? Would I be a good fit for him? And is he actually, like, to the core of his core, a great guy?
Yeah.
So I remember going on this first date, and I was nervous, but I actually wasn't that nervous because ahead of time I had prepared a few very specific questions to help me in that specific circumstance figure out if I should go on another date with him. Because I was like, I don't want to make this awkward by going on like 10 dates and then being like, peace out, I actually don't even care, or this isn't going to work out. I wanted to be as intentional as possible up front. And so in the end, those questions really helped, and I was really able to focus and not be super sweaty and distressed, except the waiter made like a really awkward comment about our date, and I was just like, it was actually someone you knew. Yes, it was some random guy. I have no idea who it is, so no offense if he watches this. It was someone random that you knew. And I was like, okay, don't make awkward comments on a couple when they're on a first date. It's already hard enough, you know? So that was like a little bit of an awkward vibe, but hopefully that won't happen to you. So we want to share questions that we brainstorm together that we feel like will really equip you, not just for a first date, but to help you really know, should I go on a second date? That's what you're trying to figure out. Not should I marry him? Should I spend the rest of my life with him? Will he incorporate into my family? No, you're just trying to figure out, should I go on date number 2? That's the goal. And so these 3 questions
are coming at you fast. Okay. Yeah. And you know what? You don't need to be awkward about these questions. What we're not saying is get these questions on your phone and go like this. Hi, I would like to ask you a few questions to find out if marriage would be a suitable match for us. Like,
really?
Don't be weird about it. Just ask these, and we'll give you some examples as we go through them. Ask them in a natural way. Think in advance of how you can incorporate these into a normal conversation.
Okay. I just have to say, our younger siblings made the most hilarious, like extreme kind of like parody video of what an extreme, almost like really serious hoarding relationship could look like. Okay, we're gonna have to link this below because they made this years ago when they were like, I don't know, 12 and 16.
It was really funny.
You have to watch that afterwards. We're gonna put a parody. This is what we're not talking to. When you see our sister Rebecca in the video, we are saying, don't do that.
Okay, so question number 1, and these questions are serious, but again, ask them in a way that feels natural to you. You don't have to copy our wording exactly. This is just to give you the idea. So question number 1, what does being a Christian mean to you? That is an excellent question to ask, because it's not just saying, you know, first of all, the question is assuming that he is a Christian. So as a Christian woman, our encouragement to you would to not go on a date with a guy if you know for sure he's not a Christian. Like, he's not a believer. Don't even go there. That's not helpful. That's not going to go in a good direction. Like, just don't even go there. But okay, you met him at church, or you know he's a Christian. He says he is at least. On that first date, casually ask him, hey, so what does being a Christian mean to you? And see what he says, because what he says, how much he expands, you'll be able to tell how passionate he is about what he's saying. No, how much he expands in that. If he's just like, oh yeah, it's cool, man. Like, I go to church and I don't know. Like, I go to church every Sunday, and yeah, like, it really brings encouragement into my life.
Or you're like, I hit it up on the holidays. I hit up church on the holidays.
On that Easter, on that Christmas. Or if he's like, oh man, like, being a Christian is everything. Like, it's changed my life. Like, Jesus has radically transformed, like, everything about me. And, like, he's my anchor. Like, yeah, I became saved. You know, maybe he'll go into his testimony. Like, it's just a great, like, a question that he can take a million different directions, and it'll give you a peek into his heart and what he thinks it means to be a Christian, and how serious he takes being a Christian. Yeah,
and I think also follow up and give him a little bit of grace. If he seems like nervous, maybe he's really nervous too. So if he's like, oh yeah, church is really important to me, and you're like, well, he didn't give enough details, you know, like, don't be like, oh, you know, like an investigator about it. Like, be like, okay, so, you know, what else does that mean? Did you grow up in a Christian home? You know, be gracious. Yeah.
Follow up, basic, natural follow up questions.
Okay, so question number 2 on the 3 must ask questions on a first date. Question 2, what role do you think the Bible should play in a person's life today? This is super, super helpful, because now you're taking a little bit deeper to find out, okay, is he just like a Sunday Christian? He goes to church on Sunday and then it's like, whatever, the rest of the week? Or does he value God's word? Does he view it as like the source of truth and as his guide and the thing that he should help like filter his thoughts and his choices and his life through? What role does the Bible play in his life? And so, like we were saying, don't sit there and then immediately be like, so what role does the Bible, like, you know, are you KJV, NIV, what are you? You know, like, we're not saying that. We're saying just try to figure out, does he value God's word? Or is he kind of like, well, I mean, I think it's kind of outdated. I think we really need to be a little bit more progressive and kind of change our views on some things. Like, you know, that would be a big red flag in our opinion. So we think that it's really important to figure out his stance, not only on what it means to be a Christian, but also on God's perfect word, because that is the anchor, of our lives as Christians.
Something is informing his worldview, right? Yeah. So it's either his worldview about life, about truth, about purpose, about identity. It's either coming from the Bible, like holy, sure. Like he gets all of that from God's word. That is his source. Or it's coming from a little bit of the Bible, a little bit from the world, a little bit from his feelings. And you really want to know, what is his guiding source of truth? Okay, so that's the first 2. The last one, and this This is a fun, a little bit more casual, but I think really important, obviously, a must-ask question. What's something random that you're passionate about, and what's something more meaningful that you're passionate about? And this is a fun question you can honestly ask anyone, but on that first date, this is really, really cool because this is going to help you see that kind of like, what are you randomly passionate about? More maybe the fun side, the silly side, like, oh man, I'm super into like race car driving. I always say, oh man, like he's talking to like a bro. I'm trying to be like,
you're trying to be relatable.
Yeah, I'm trying to act like the guy. I mean, yeah, not good. So like, yeah, he might say something like, oh, I'm into race car driving, or oh, I love guitar, like that's such a big hobby of mine, or totally. Photography, or it could be something super random and that you would never even guess, and you're like, oh, okay, I don't think I could ever live with that. Or you're like, oh, I love that side of him, like that's quirky and kind of fun. And then the more meaningful thing that he's passionate about, this is what you're really going to be paying attention to, like where does he get his purpose? What fires him up? What wakes him up in the morning? What gets him going? Totally. And we're not just talking coffee. We're talking like, what is this guy actually passionate about? Yeah, and asking that. And then even you could follow up and say like, oh, that's so interesting. Why are you passionate about that? Like, how did you get so passionate about this? And what he says will be really revealing. And you could ask him, share a few things you're passionate. It doesn't have to be like the one thing. But that question will give you a peek more into his character, what he thinks his purpose is, his identity, his passions, and just you'll get to know him a little bit more.
So I would encourage you go write those down, save them for the future. If you're like, well, I don't have a first date in my future.
We'll post these in the comments.
Yeah, we'll post them in the comments, save them, pass them on to your friends. Pass them on to your friends. I really encourage you to, especially if you are on social, if you're on Instagram, your single friends or your friends who you know are about to go on a first date, I want you to share this episode right now with them. Like either copy the link or share this, send it to their inbox and be like, hey friend, this is something you need to watch, especially if you know girls who are in the dating phase. Like pass this along right now. But something else we wanted to make sure you know about is Love Defined, because if you are interested in this topic and you're like, I want to know more. These are great questions, but what are deal breakers? Like, what are red flags? How do I know if I hear something, is it a red flag? Is it not?
Or like boundaries in our dating relationship. If things go well, if things go really well over time, how do I know if he's the one I should marry? Absolutely. I mean, we address all of that in Love Defined.
Everything that you need to know about relationships is in Love Defined. Even singleness, like how to be content and thrive. And we actually wrote a bunch of must-ask questions in the back of this book, but to make it even more accessible to you, if you're like, okay, I really want the book, but maybe I can't grab it right now, we want to give you something for free that you can take home right now.
Something free. You may have seen us talk about this, 136 questions to ask in a relationship. Do not ask all of these on your first date. We do not recommend them. Go with the 3 we just shared.
This is but over
time, it has a whole bunch of different categories like spiritual life, personal relationships, personal habits and perspectives. I mean, literally, it's 136 questions that you can ask over weeks and months, just casually in conversation as you get to know this guy. So you can download this for free over at girldefine.com/questions. Get this 136 questions, put it on your phone, print it out. This has been tremendously helpful in both of our previous, husbands, but in yours. Oh, it didn't exist? I had a different list.
You had a different, that's what it was inspired by.
It was inspired by a different list, So girldefine.com/questions.
And I think that's it. So we'll see you next time.